I'm Lizanne Flynn. I'm a master healer who holds space for any earthling as they reunite body and soul. I'm a bridge for relationships between all species so that the heart bond becomes stronger, deeper, and more loving. I serve in the roles of animal communicator, medium, and medical intuitive, and I use the tools of shamanic journeying and soul retrieval to support all earthlings in their recovery from past trauma. I'm certified as a canine massage therapist and Reiki master teacher. This is the Animals iView podcast. It is almost a guarantee that new clients who come to me will have the trait of high sensitivity be brought forward as part of their session. And honestly, I think that part of it is that these folks have already sensed on some level of their body that there's more to life than this third dimension. So they go searching for someone or something else that validates that for them, like wanting to know when their beloved animal companion is going to transition and what the animal thinks about that overall. Or like wanting to connect with a partner or perhaps a child. I've had a few of those who have transitioned suddenly. And so there's a lack of information and closure about that. So, in order to validate these individuals about their energetic experience, I open the door to the room of high sensitivity and turn on the light so that they can feel more comfortable in who they are and how they are on this planet. Interestingly, it was Carl Jung who originally came up with the label of innate sensitivity. And here's a quote from him in 1913. This excessive sensitiveness very often brings an enrichment of the personality. Only when difficult and unusual situations arise, the advantage frequently turns into a very great disadvantage, since calm consideration is then disturbed by untimely effects. Nothing could be more mistaken, though, than to regard this excessive sensitiveness as in itself a pathological character component. If that were really so, we should have to rate about 1/4 of humanity as pathological. As I've said before, I rather wish it was revised overall to be highly sensitive body in order to give humans room to maneuver that divine space between body and soul. If we say highly sensitive person, you can see how that tends to put one into the very category, like the astrological signs in which we stamp people with a code that's usually negative. For instance, you're so sensitive. Geez, can't you just take a joke for once? Or you're such a Sagittarius, or that's exactly what a Virgo would say. Can't you let go of the details for once? You see where I'm going with this. To a certain extent, I think that's part of our herd biology because to other members of the herd, we stick out. We're different, and different in a herd can impact the safety of the herd overall. So we're ostracized, sometimes a little and sometimes a lot. And I think in truth, we ostracize ourselves. Just like the trait of high sensitivity, statistics show that only between 10 to 20% of humans identify as neurodivergent in that their body processes information differently than the other 80 to 90% of the population. And in one of the article links in the podcast notes, it's interesting that neurodiversity, which I have to say is such a fabulous term for this neurological processing, seems to be more focused on the brain versus the whole nervous system. And that's just my take. I'm open to being corrected if that's not the case. Naturally, the animals chime in with, there you go with your separating one part of the body from the other. Everything works together, and we argue that the brain is as evident in the tip of your pinky finger as it is between your ears. One part connects to the other faster than you can say 115,197 feet per second or 3,560 meters per second. I Googled the scientific interpretation of how fast this happens, that the brain connects with other parts of the body. The animals don't worry themselves with such facts, they just live it. When I was first starting out in my career, I came across an article specific to individuals identified with being on the autism spectrum. And so the link in the podcast notes is a bit dated, 2009, and yet I saved it because in my professional experience, the more I could broaden the scope of organic acceptance of how bodies respond to energy, the better. So, the short of a long story was that groups of kids were subjected to blood draws, as one might have in a doctor's office as part of an annual physical. They were then hooked up to EKG machines as well as had their blood pressure and breathing monitored during what is usually a stressful event for kids, needles, etc. Not surprisingly to me, but apparently surprising to the authors of the study, it was the bodies of the kids who were identified as having autism, as defined by humans, that reacted much more strongly than the kids who were not identified as having autism. And it was also that the outward behaviors of the autism identified kids, that if we were to just go by that, may not have indicated such a response. For instance, they may not be verbal, they may not move around much, yet it was this study that struck me so much about the assumptions we make when we simply observe others without talking with them. We certainly could conclude that because the kids identified with autism exhibited no outward signs of discomfort per se, they were equally shut down to the stimuli of pain and stress. After all, we think, if we can't see it, how do we know it's there? We judge them by saying, well, they don't say much anyway. I don't hear their emotions, and they don't hug me or other people, so I don't think they feel much. Which, on a side note, is my issue with ethology or ethology, the study of the behavior of animals. Yes, we can deduce information from the behavior of all animals on the planet when we observe them, including the human animal. But how much are we really going to know how they are if we don't talk to them to understand their experience in a very different body than ours? The very same thing goes for other labels of ADD, ADHD, etc., that we put on kids in particular. I maintain that their physiological level of stimulation is set even lower than the 20% of those who identify as being neurodivergent. Because of that, and in order to survive on planet Earth, they literally have no choice except to shut down their feedback system to additional external stimulation. They take in so much more energy than the rest of us do, so their nervous system may make a choice about not needing to continue the ongoing loop of external stimulation, say, with other humans. I maintain this is why animals can be so facilitative for humans with this kind of neurodivergence, because there's no poking or prodding by the animal to give back, in a sense, an external validation of being one with the herd. The dog or the cat or bearded dragon just lets them be and embraces where they are on the spectrum, if you will, of energy. All because a different species than ours understands the benefits of unified duality with balance and partnership. There's very little judging or insistence that they must be like one species or another, and there's very little setting them apart with a typically negative label. Every other species on the planet, from ant to blue whale, understands that everyone plays a role and each individual is honored for that role. When that happens, there can be a collective that rises above survival and gets to, my made-up word, thrival. Quoting from the article about neurodiversity, neurodivergence is the term for when someone's brain processes, learns, and/or behaves differently from what is considered typical. Formerly considered a problem or abnormal, scientists now understand that neurodivergence isn't inherently an issue for the individual and that it has a large societal benefit. Not all presentations of neurodivergence are a disability, like synesthesia, but all are a difference in how the brain works. With this shift, practitioners are no longer treating neurodivergence as inherently an illness. They are instead viewing them as different methods of learning and processing information, some of which become disabilities in an inaccessible and ableist society. The term neurodiversity was coined by sociologist Judy Singer, who is autistic, in 1977. Neurodiversity can be broken down into two categories of people: those who are neurotypical and those who are neurodivergent. And I don't know about you, but even in this article promoting a more diverse view of how individuals are unique, there's still labeling. There's still a setting apart, a division between what's neurotypical and what that word means, the other 80% of the population, and what's neurodiverse, you and me, and the other 20% of the population. And I didn't get from the article the fact that this may be a genetic trait, as is stated with another label, that of the trait of high sensitivity. I'll put a link in the podcast notes to Elaine Aron's website, that of the highly sensitive person, that carries forward the broader work of Jung. There's a quiz on the website, and I encourage everyone to take it. And if you have kids, I encourage you to encourage your kids to take it as well. It's of extraordinary help and support and solidification to be able to say about yourself, I have a body that is either highly sensitive or neurodivergent. And to be honest, I think I prefer the latter now, neurodivergent. I introduced this concept to both of my sons when they were in middle school, and I'd like to think that it helped them throughout the rest of their years spent in traditional public schooling. Because the fact that we put kids of all different kinds into large groups, say 25 or 30 for 6 to 8 hours per day, who happen to be neurodivergent, and expect them, without information about their bodies, to ignore their body's warnings of too much energy / information / input is patently ludicrous. It's a situation where their threshold of stimulation gets breached, which puts the body into a reactive defense mode. The body thinks it's under attack from the environment, so in order to preserve itself, it may send messages of claustrophobia, blurred vision, anxiety, etc., to the owner of the body. So if you're a kid, even if you're an adult, and you don't understand what's happening, you're going to want to get up and move away from what's the danger, Will Robinson, in your environment. You may react with defensive behavior that looks and acts fierce and combative because you're reacting to your body. We do such a disservice to our young by not giving them a better owner's manual for their own bodies. And we do that because our parents likely didn't do that for us either. My mom, when discovering toward the end of her life that she also had the trait of high sensitivity, I've probably already told that to you already, said, "Oh, I always hated that about myself, and I never wanted any of you kids to turn out that way." Wowza. Imagine the messaging I received. And here's the thing. You have a choice about your neurodivergence. Don't get me wrong. You can't change this about yourself any more than you can change the color of your eyes or the size of your feet. Your body was created this way in your mother's womb, and on a soul level, you chose this. Likely because you were meant to inhabit such a body throughout other lifetimes. The choice I'm referring to is responding versus reacting to the input of energy your body gifts to you. Your body thinks you need this information, and because it can send more input than the average, it's going to do that. I'm seeing it's similar to a vase that holds water. The larger the reservoir of water, and in this case, size of energy capacity, the more energy and water is going to seek its own level. More is going to come in. What does that mean for you when your neurodivergent body is overwhelmed and simply incapable of more input? Well, you can acknowledge what is going on. Gosh, my body feels all jangly nerve-wise. I'm having trouble sleeping and I'm feeling anxious. The best next question is, what might be causing my body to react this way? Well, work was a beast this week. My partner and I were arguing quite a bit, and the dog slash cat slash bearded dragon is sick. You might even be feeling the density of just these last statements, even though this is not happening for you. The next question: what can I shift to lessen the load on my body? My choices would be reconciling with my partner and getting answers and or treatment for my animal companions. Work would be, frankly, a distant third for me. It's also helpful to ask, why am I reacting to this situation at home or at work the way that I am? How can I shift that to a chosen response? And this is where the superpower of neurodivergence comes in. Let's face it, you get more information about most situations than most people in the form of energy. Before someone opens their mouth to tell you who they are, you are probably going to sense it. And of course, that's the additional challenge. Because your body may already be on overwhelm, and it's your job to manage that, by the way, getting extra rest, taking some time off of activities, et cetera, et cetera. This other information may fly by, or it may appear larger than what it really is, just like the side view mirror on your car. Still, you get to choose how and to whom you'll respond. Can you snap at the perceived slower than normal cashier because your body is tired and you just want to get home? Sure, that's a choice. Can you yell at your partner for a small infraction of a violation like forgetting again to squeeze the toothpaste tube from the bottom? Sure, that's a choice. My argument is that only by becoming observant of all of the energy around you in a neutral way versus a knee jerk reaction can you utilize this superpower of sensory information that's always, always, always going to be accompanied by universal wisdom. If you choose to continue a less than joyful interaction of energy, you'll continue to get what you put out there. Because it's an interesting question of why this genetic sequence of neurodivergence keeps on replicating in a small segment of our population. We're meant to be drawn to the things that make our hearts skip a beat because we feel them so strongly and so deeply. We're meant to lead the way in these areas and let others see how to do that. We're meant to sense what can't be put into words for those who cannot speak for themselves and to become their advocates in ways that seem magical to others and are really just a reflection and an ability of the superpower of our neurodivergence. What if we were to flip those statistics around and say that 80% of the human animal species is neurodivergent and is able to sense without words what's needed by another of our species and or by another of a different species? Well, to quote a song, what a wonderful world that would be. And at least that's how the animals see it. Thanks for listening today. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. I offer all new clients a free 15-minute consultation. To schedule online, go to lizanneflynn.com. Come and find me on social media, Facebook, X, Twitterverse, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I encourage you to sign up for my quarterly newsletter on my website, where I also post notices for upcoming events, the starting date of courses in the Animals iView Academy, and online psychic fairs. The episodes of this podcast are available on my YouTube channel, complete with subtitles. You'll find that link in my podcast footer and be sure to subscribe. This has been the Animals iView podcast. I'll see you next time.